He launched a war to prove Russia's strength. Instead, the world is watching something else unfold entirely. Battlefield losses, fleeing professionals, a shrinking economy hiding behind wartime spending. NATO grew stronger, not weaker. Moscow depends on a partner it once dwarfed. Inside the Kremlin, loyalty is cracking. One miscalculation may cost him everything.
The initial calculation, the Blitzkrieg fallacy. When Vladimir Putin sent his tanks into Ukraine in February 2022, he had one big plan in mind: take the capital, Kyiv, in just a few days. His generals believed the government would fall fast, almost like a house of cards. They thought Ukrainian soldiers would give up, and regular people would simply accept a new leader picked by Moscow. But that is not what happened. Ukrainian soldiers fought back hard. Regular citizens picked up guns to defend their homes. Cities that were supposed to fall in days held strong for weeks, then months. What was meant to be a quick 3-day war turned into one of the longest and bloodiest conflicts in modern European history. The very first assumption behind this whole invasion turned out to be wrong. And once that first domino fell, it triggered a chain reaction Putin never saw coming, one that would test his power in ways he never expected.
Resurgent alliances, the expansion and consolidation of NATO. Putin told the world he invaded Ukraine to stop NATO, the military alliance of Western countries, from growing closer to Russia's border. He wanted less NATO, not more. But something strange happened. Two countries that had stayed neutral for decades, Finland and Sweden, watched the invasion and got scared. So they did the exact opposite of what Putin wanted. They joined NATO. Just like that, Russia's border with NATO countries doubled in size overnight. The Baltic Sea, once shared space, became almost completely surrounded by NATO nations. Instead of pushing the alliance back, Putin pulled it closer than ever before. European countries also started spending huge amounts of money rebuilding their armies, something they had not done in years. The very war meant to weaken NATO ended up making it stronger, bigger, and more united than at any point in decades. It was a gamble that backfired badly. But military alliances were only the beginning of the surprises still to come.
Strategic attrition, economic insulation versus structural decay. After the invasion, more than 20,000 sanctions hit Russia from countries around the world. Banks were cut off. Trade routes were blocked. Many experts predicted the Russian economy would collapse within months. But Putin had a plan. He turned Russia into what some call a fortress economy. The government poured huge amounts of money into weapons factories, tanks, and missiles, keeping millions of people employed and the economy technically alive. For a while, it seemed to work. But look closer and cracks start to show. Regular factories that make normal things, like cars, clothes, and appliances, have been starved of workers and money. Almost everything is going toward the war machine instead. Prices for everyday goods have shot up. Regions far from Moscow are struggling badly to pay their bills. The economy looks strong on the surface, like a shiny coat of paint. But underneath, the wood is slowly rotting. Sooner or later, that hidden damage will have to come out into the open.
Domestic stability and the mobilization dilemma. For years, Putin kept an unspoken deal with the Russian people. Stay quiet about politics, and life stays stable and comfortable. Big cities like Moscow and St. Petersburg were kept far away from the pain of war. Life there looked mostly normal. But as the war dragged on, Russia needed more soldiers, and fast. So the government began forcing men to join the military, a move called mobilization. Here's the twist. Most of the men called up did not come from wealthy Moscow neighborhoods. They came from poor rural areas and minority ethnic regions far from the capital. Families in these places watched their sons and husbands get sent to the front lines, while city elites stayed safely at home. This unfair pattern started cracking the old deal between Putin and his people. Quiet acceptance slowly turned into hidden anger. People may not protest loudly, not yet, but resentment is building underneath the surface. And history shows that kind of pressure rarely stays hidden forever.
Demographics and brain drain. The human capital crisis. War does not just cost bullets and tanks. It costs people, and Russia is losing them fast. Hundreds of thousands of soldiers have been killed or badly wounded on the battlefield. But there is another, quieter crisis happening at the same time. Hundreds of thousands of Russia's smartest young people, computer programmers, engineers, scientists, and business owners, packed their bags and left the country. Many did not want to be drafted into the war. Others simply saw no future left at home. This is often called a brain drain, and for Russia, it is happening at an alarming speed. These are exactly the kind of people a country needs to build new technology, grow businesses, and stay competitive on the world stage. Russia's population was already shrinking before the war even began, with fewer babies being born each year. Now add battlefield deaths and this mass exit of talent on top of that. The math is troubling. A country cannot stay powerful for long once it starts running out of people to build its future.
Energy realignment. Loss of the European gas hegemony. For decades, Russia held a powerful card over Europe: cheap natural gas. Huge pipelines carried that gas straight into European homes and factories, giving Moscow real leverage. If Europe ever pushed back against Russia, Putin could simply turn down the gas and watch prices spike. It was quiet, effective power. After the invasion, Putin tried to use that exact card, cutting gas supplies to pressure Europe. But instead of folding, Europe adapted. Countries scrambled to find new energy sources, buying liquid natural gas shipped in by boat from places like the United States and Qatar. They invested heavily in solar and wind power. Within a couple of years, Europe had built an entirely new energy system that did not depend on Russia at all. Gazprom, Russia's massive energy company, lost its biggest customer almost overnight. Trying to sell that same gas to Asian countries instead has not made up for the loss. Putin gave away one of his strongest weapons, and he cannot easily get it back.
Geopolitical asymmetry, the increasing dependence on Beijing. Cut off from Western countries, Russia needed a new best friend, and fast. That friend became China. Trade between the two countries exploded after the invasion. Russia started buying huge amounts of Chinese electronics, cars, and machine parts. Chinese banks began handling deals that Western banks refused to touch. On the surface, this looks like a strong friendship between two powerful nations standing against the West together. But look closer, and the relationship is far from equal. China is the much bigger, richer economy, and Russia badly needs what China sells. That gives Beijing enormous leverage over Moscow. China can set the prices, choose the terms, and Russia has very few other options left. What was once a proud, independent superpower is now leaning heavily on a partner who holds most of the power in the relationship. Putin wanted freedom from Western control. Instead, he may have traded one kind of dependence for another, this time with China holding most of the cards. Military-industrial strain. Logistics, stocks, and asymmetric warfare. Modern war eats up equipment at a shocking speed. Tanks, artillery shells, ammunition, all of it built up over decades during the Soviet era, is being burned through faster than factories can replace it. Russia has ramped up its weapons production, running factories day and night. But there is a problem. Many advanced weapons need high-tech computer chips, and Western export bans have made those chips very hard to get. That slows everything down. Meanwhile, Ukraine found a clever way to fight back without matching Russia tank for tank: long-range drones. These drones strike deep inside Russian territory, hitting oil refineries, airfields, and supply depots far from the front lines. Russia has had to pull air defense systems away from the battlefield just to protect targets back home. It is like defending a house from 100 different directions at once with only a few guards. Every reserve, every stockpile, every supply line is being stretched thinner and thinner, with no easy way to fully rebuild it.
The soft power fracture, isolation in the global order. Russia's influence used to stretch far beyond Ukraine, into places like Central Asia and the Caucasus region, countries that once trusted Moscow as their protector. That trust is now fading fast.
Watching Russia struggle in Ukraine, these neighboring countries started looking elsewhere for friendship and protection, turning instead to China, Turkey, and the European Union. Old alliances that lasted for generations are quietly falling apart. At the same time, Putin has tried hard to win support from countries in Africa, Asia, and South America, often called the Global South, by presenting Russia as an enemy of Western power. Some of that messaging has worked, but Russia's reputation as a reliable partner, a country that keeps its promises and protects its allies, has taken a serious hit. Nations across the world are asking a simple question: if Russia cannot even secure its own goals in Ukraine, can it really be trusted to protect anyone else? That single question is slowly chipping away at decades of carefully built global influence.
Regime security and unintended consequences, internal vulnerabilities. Long, difficult wars put enormous stress on the people at the very top. In 2023, that stress exploded into public view when Yevgeny Prigozhin, the leader of the Wagner mercenary group, turned his fighters around and marched them toward Moscow itself. For a few tense hours, it looked like Putin's grip on power might actually break from the inside. The mutiny was stopped, but the message was impossible to ignore. Even loyal insiders can turn dangerous when a war stops going well. Since then, Putin has tightened his control even further, cracking down on any hint of criticism, replacing military leaders he no longer trusts, and clamping down hard on independent news and information. Keeping that level of control takes enormous time, money, and energy, resources that could otherwise go toward winning the war itself. The more power gets concentrated in one man's hands, the more fragile that power secretly becomes. One unexpected setback on the battlefield, and the whole structure could face a crisis nobody sees coming until it is already happening. Putin wanted a quick war and a stronger Russia. Instead, he got a longer conflict, a shrinking population, a weaker economy, and a country leaning on China to survive. NATO grew bigger. Europe broke free of Russian gas. Old allies drifted away. And inside the Kremlin, cracks are starting to show. History has a pattern. The biggest gambles often carry the biggest costs, and sometimes the real danger was never the enemy outside. It was the miscalculation from within. Only time will reveal how this story ends. Thanks for watching.